Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. We are learning Maseches Zevachim Daf Vav tonight, and we're starting about halfway down on the last of the short lines of Daf Chav Amud Beis. We were having a conversation, a little bit out of context, granted, but we were having a conversation, if you may recall, about the waters going into the kli of the para aduma to make the mei para. And there we were discussing, at least by comparison, to the vridim, to the jugular veins that were to be put in the kli machlokes, Rambam and Tosfos. If you actually you grab the neck and orient it so that it's pointing that way, or no, would you like it to just be close? We were making these comparisons. So the Gemara right now is actually going to do a little bit of a conversation around para aduma. Says the Gemara on Chav Hey Amud Beis, on the last of the short lines, Tanan Hasam. We have a Mishnah in Maseches Para. Nasan yado o raglo o ola yirakos kadesh yavru mayim lechavis psulin. Let's say there's water running on a mountain, spring water, which is exactly what we want for Mei Para. But with its natural flow, it will never fill up the kli. So what you do is you take your hand and you kind of touch the water and let the water bridge over your hand, and then it drips off your hand and goes into the appropriate kli. And it can either be your hand, it could be your regel, it could be the leaves of vegetables, which are edible. In all of these cases, if you successfully maneuvered the water from the mountainside into the kli, all of these cases, the halacha is that they are psulim. In contrast, ale kanim va'ale egozim, the leaves of reeds or the leaves of nuts, which are not edible, those are kshera. Why is that the line in the sand of edibility? So says the Gemara, zehaklal. Here's the principle. Davar hamakabel tuma psulin, davar she'ena makabel tuma ksherin. Again, water flowing on the mountain from a spring, but it's not flowing into the kli that you need it to flow into to make the mei para. So you take an object and you use it to bridge the water. The water just connects and it just bridges, and then it drips in givaldik. But the rule is that it has to be something that is not mikabel tuma. Why is it that we need it to be that the bridge for the water to get from the spring to the kli can't be makabel tuma? Mili, Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yossi bar Abba Omar Kra. We have a pasuk in Sefer Vayikra. Ach ma'yon uvor mikvei mayim yihyeh tahor. From the spring, from the pit of the mikveh, the water needs to be tahor. Havyasan al yedei tahara tehei. That in order to bring it to fruition, in order to make it that the water is going to be put into the kli of the para aduma, it needs to be al yedei tahara. So this is a drasha that we need to make sure that the items that bring the spring water to the kli for the para aduma need to be items that are not mekabel tuma. That's why it can't be people. I can become tameh. Can't be my hand or foot, and it can't be the leaves of vegetables, which technically are edible. But it can be the other things that are not makabel tuma. The other examples there were ale kanim va'ale egozim. I don't know what that means. What are ale egozim? The leaves of nuts.
Tree.
What nuts are we talking about?
What
nuts are we talking about? What?
Walnuts.
And they have regular leaf. Why are they any different than any other leaf? I don't understand.
Vegetable leaves, lettuce. Is that
Some of them are, yeah. Some of them are.
I mean, I'm certainly not arguing with you.
I don't
But I
eat.
think the idea is
Maybe I just don't like salad, I think is what's coming out.
no.
I was thinking very differently. I was thinking about like leaves that accompany a vegetable. You're not saying that. You're saying the leaf is the vegetable. That's what I understood from you. Yeah. That makes more sense. Anyways, that's the Mari Makom. Is that of what?
You have leaves of it coming out.
Fascinating.
Yeah, you keep reading if you want, but I have to know.
I'm just happy you're Googling things about our shiur. I didn't even know. I don't know what.
Back here.
I have no idea. You're in the back corner. I have no idea, Stan. I was Choshed Big Shiur. I assumed you were doing something excellent, and you were. It's also what? Oh my gosh.
I didn't know this.
I don't even know what teams you're talking about.
Neither do I, by the way.
Huh?
No, I'm the not.
Thank you. Let's keep it on the reservation. Givaldic. Okay, Amar Reb Chia. Reb Chia says, Amar Reb Yochanan, Zos Omeres, Avir Kli Kikli Dami. What we see from here, from the fact that we still have cases that are puzzle, namely in the cases where it's Makabel Tuma, the fact that we still have cases that are puzzle, it shows us that Avir Kli, the airspace above the Kli, it's as though it's in the Kli, because if it were to be the case that the liquid was a separate entity of the hand, which we might have thought, because let's say water's rushing off your hand and it kind of takes a jump off and then gravity pulls it down. I might have thought it's a different entity. No, it's not. They're all exactly the same. So then the Gemara says, wait 1 second. Omar le Reb Zera le Reb Chia bar Abba, your assumption of avir kli kikli dami assumes that the water kind of first left the person's hand and then gravity took effect. But the Dilma Bishoses, maybe the water is just slowly dripping down, and then no, the only reason it's Tameh is because it's not Makabel Tuma. So says the Gemara, Amar le Tarda. This is a very negative word. Rashi here gives a very sharp explanation of what Tarda means. It's about 12 lines into the wide lines. Rashi says Tarda, Shote Bahul, a confused Shote, not good language. So Amar Tardo, this language is also found in other places, but differently. Tirara, if you look in the Masoras Hashas with Hosafos, and the Aruch in Erech Tarar. He says not Tarda, but it's Tirara. It's slightly different words. They're not good, either of them. They're insulting. Kadeshi Yavru Mayim Luchavis. The language was Ya'avru, not Shoses, but that the water was flowing out. So if I put my hand there to bridge, the water is still going to gush beyond my hand, and that's how we are able to make the diuk of Avir Kli Kikli Dami. Kadeshi Yavru Mayim Luchavis Tnan. Period. The Amar Reb Chia bar Abba Amar Reb Yochanan me eduso sharib tzadok nishnes mishnazu. The Mishnah that we saw from Para was actually from the Edus of Reb Tzadok. What does that mean? Ditnan. We have a Mishnah from Maseches Edios that we just skipped. Would have been the next Masechta, but we don't learn that as part of Daf Yomi. Ditnan. Hey Reb Tzadok al hazochalin, on flowing waters, shekilchan, that you divert in order to move somewhere. Ba'alei gozim shehin ksherin. If you divert them with be'alei gozim, with the leaves of nuts, which we now know are inedible, thank you to Stan, shehin ksherin, that's considered a reasonable transfer of liquid, because that's something that is not mekabel tuma, based on the pasuk, have yasan al yedei tahara tehe. Zehaya maise be'ohalia, this which is the name of a location. Ohalia apparently was the name of a city, and the Gemara says that in that particular city something happened. Where they used the ale gozim, and they considered it to be an acceptable bridge of water from the rock to the para aduma. This is lamaisa, because they had a para aduma in the Beis Hamikdash at that time. Not all the time, but at that time they did. So therefore, we see that it's a real thing. And maybe we should make similar tushtav. Like if you're making a mikvah, maybe the kalim that you use should not be things that are makabel tuma. Again, we're not poskim, but it would be a very reasonable assumption. If you're trying to make something holy, then the things that you're making that are holy perhaps should only have
I wonder if the pipes leading in.
PVC as opposed to copper.
Or I think more extra makbidam. It's the highest level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know enough to know.
Our mikvah has metal.
Very interesting.
Our mikvah for sure has metal pipes in it. That's for sure, because I've seen them, like in the mikvah. What?
Between the bore and the mikvah, you're saying?
Even the pipes in the mikvah are metal.
A whole other story.
Why?
Because the bore, meaning not where you get in, but the bore that's connected to it, that's where it's at. So the rainwater comes into there via, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's a little bridge that allows some of the water to kind of wade in.
Connects it. I'm sure what material that is. It's all pretty fascinating, actually.
I don't think we use PVC for water.
You definitely use PVC for cold water.
We do for cold water?
You can, but so maybe not incoming. It's copper incoming.
Right. And I know my house, it just 7 years ago, this copper. Those things get stolen from construction sites right and left. They're Gavaldas. Side hustle. Okay, says the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom. Amar Reb Zera, Amar, it's not Rebbe, because Reb Zera did not learn under Rebbe. Rebbe was the last of the Tanai. So Reb Zera was 2 generations out. So if you look at that little aleph, Amar Reb Zera, Amar Reb Yochanan, and other girsos have Amar Reb Zera, Amar Rav. So we're not exactly sure what girsa it is. We just know it's not this one. It's not Rebbe. And even if it was Rebbe, it should have been Amar Reb Zera, Amar Reb Yochanan, Amar Rav, because again, he didn't hear it directly from Rebbe. Hatzorim ozen hapar. If somebody nicks or cuts the ozen of the par, the achar kach kibel damo puzzle. So what we're talking about is a kohen who's doing shchita in the Beis Hamikdash. He does the cut toward him or away from him, and on the way up, he nicks the ear of the cow. So what's the din in such a case? If you did that, and after the nick, ve'achar kach kibel damo, halacha is puzzle. The korban, the zrika is puzzle. Why? Shenemar v'lakach midam hapar par shahaya kvar. It needed to be like the par at the moment of shchita. The par at the moment of shchita, other than the shchita itself, had no mumen. And to cut the cartilage of an animal is a mum. So the Gemara says that even though the shchita was already done, in order for you to do the Kabbalah and the Zrika, the animal still has to remain in an unblemished form. Interesting halacha. I would have thought the ein mum gadol mizu, that you just caught the kan and the veshet, but the Gemara seems to say that the drasha is taka at that point. Right prior to the Kabbalah, what did it look like? There was a cut in the neck, 100% maskin. That's not considered to be a mum. We'll see soon that cutting flesh in general is not necessarily a mum. Happens to be that cutting the cartilage of the ear is a mum. That's why that was the example, because cutting regular flesh is not a mum. We'll see that as an example. Perfect animal, perfect shchita.
Oh, would have been perfect, but
Except that on the way off of the shchita, prior to the Kabbalah, he nicked the ear of the animal and cut the cartilage. It's a very rapid flow of events. We're talking this is all seconds, right? So he cuts, the blood is gushing,
Shook its head.
and a lot of things can happen. But if the shochet cuts the ear or creates a mum, the example is just one example. The example here is of cutting the cartilage of the ear. You can no longer do the Kabbalah. Ashkechan Kodshe Kachim, because the pasuk of Elokach Midam Apar was talking about Kodshe Kachim. Perhaps we could extend this to Kodshim Kalim, also a Korban Pesach. Let's say there by the Korban Pesach, the Kohen extends his cut and he cuts the cartilage of the ear Minolan. Amar Rava, we'll soon see that this sheet of Rava is not so simple. Amar Rava, Tanya, we have a brisa. Set Tamim Zachar Ben Shana, Shehe Tamim Uven Shana, B'Shas Shchita. It needs to be Tamim, and it needs to be a Zachar, and it needs to be Ben Shana. So on the Tamim one, what do we see? Oh, it's got to be Givaldik. It's got to be without the nicks in the ear. It's got to be a Tamim. Says the Gemara, that's great that you figure it out by Shchita, that's true. Bekabbalah beholach bezrika minayin Talmud lomar yihyeh. It's a long pasuk, but the pasuk says, "Set tamim zachar ben shano yihyeh lachem min hakvasim min azim tikachu." So yihyeh kolav yaso lo yihyeh ela tamu ven shana. So Rava is trying to bring a raya from the word tamim, from the fact that we see that there's a din that there needs to be tamim by kachim kalim. So Abaye is not having it. Esve Abaye, he quotes a brisa. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Kol Zevachim shebatorah shenishtayer mehen bekizayis basar or kizayis cheleb zorek es adam. Even if there's only a kizayis basar left, you butchered up the whole entire thing. You're still allowed to bring the dam. That's by kachim kalim. Kachim, we're not talking about. That we clarified. By kachim, if you nick the ear, you can no longer do the Kabbalah and the Zrika. Obviously, if you can't do the Kabbalah, you can't do the Zrika, right? So here, perhaps by kachim kalim, maybe Rava zusteled from the Brisa a little bit too much. The Brisa by kachim, let's learn it again. The Brisa that he brought was set tamim v'chulei sheyehei tamim. It needs to be whole, and we extended it from shchita to Kabbalah, holacha, and Zrika. So then Abai says, no, that's definitely not true, because even if the animal's been butchered up, there's at least a kazayas basar left, you're still allowed to do the Kabbalah. Still allowed to do the Zrika. Says the Gemara, Tir Gemara Ben Shana, you're right. Rava extended it too far. Kochim stays with the regular halacha, that you're not allowed to create a mum between the shchita and the Kabbalah. And if you do, the Kabbalah is a zero. By kochim, that's not true. I'm sorry, by kochim kalim, that's not true. By kochim kalim, you are in fact allowed, even lechatchila, it seems from the Gemara, even lechatchila, you're allowed to generate a mum. Again, we're talking within moments of time here. It's very quick, very rapid, but still possible. So says the Gemara, what do you mean aben shana? After the shchita, the animal can age? But certain korbanos need to be less than a year. the shechita was before the birthday and the Kabbalah was after the birthday? What do you mean? That has to be a ben shana. Umi'i kamidi de b'shas shechita ben shana, but b'shas holacha uzrika ben shtaim. The animal's dead now, so you're gonna still count its birthday. It says the Gemara, Omar Rava Zosomeres. This teaches us that shaos poslos bekadshim, that the way we look at the birthday of an animal, the age of the animal, is from the minute that he was born. If he was born in such a way where when the shechita was done, he was taka 1 year old or less than 1 year old, and then 5 minutes later was his birth time a year ago, now he's no longer 1 year old, even though he's dead. The zrika cannot be done if he's no longer a ben shana. So that's what Rava says, and this is based on a machlokas elsewhere in Shas, that do we look at birthdays for animals like we do for people, right? You become Yud Gimel Shanim V'Yom Echad, but no, we don't look at the time on the clock. I was born at 8:30 at night. Okay, nobody cares. As long as I got my birthday correct, even on that morning, I'm a Bar Chiyuv Midoraisa. I can lane Zachar, I could be Motzi other people. I'm a Yid, I'm done, I'm a full Yid. So, but animals are different. By animals, we look hourly. Me'es. The only place where we have that for human beings, as far as I know, is by bris milah when a baby is sick. Ad sheyavri, we have to wait sheva yamim me'es la'es. So this has come up many times where babies have said, I need to do the bris at 2:47 p.m. Rabbi First is always a little makel because he says that doctors are like so uber cautious that they cushion their clean bill of health time. You could probably do it a couple hours earlier. So he's been makel for me a few times in those cases. But b'derech klal, if you really know the clean bill of health was a moment in time, sheva yamim me'es leis. Other than that, any other applications you can think of? I don't know of any other where we're so makbid on the time
People
parameter.
say like it's really a year and a day, so it's like the next.
Meaning it's a completion of 354 days on the lunar
But
cycle.
This then, does that mean, so we're being exact to the moment? But
No,
it's not.
no, just to the halachic status of tzeis, shkia tzeis, whatever the case may be. That's this happens by sfira. So Omer katan shehigdil in the middle of sfira, is he allowed to make a bracha? Because if you say that there's a tzad of sfira, that it's all one mitzvah, he's late to the party. He's on the 40th day of the Omer. So these are diunim. We don't say it's from the shas leda mamish. We just say,
Right.
huh?
For every kid born.
Every
during
kid born during sfira. Yeah, I just wrote the whole.
By Ben Yom.
I'm just asking about for.
What for what?
A Ben Yom, I think you count maybe slaves.
Yeah.
Ben Yoma for
Ben
kashrus?
Yom or-
24 hours for Ben. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that's
You asked-
definitely.
You asked for other examples.
Yeah, I did. No, that's good. I didn't think of that. Kavush Kimelicha would also be another example. I wasn't thinking in kashrus. There's a whole avenue there. Nidas to the Ona. I don't think so. Nidas to the Ona. If a woman gets her period in the morning hours, so we say then we're choshesh for the vestos for morning hours as opposed to night, unless the dilug could be different, because if you go night to morning, then the next one is morning to night for dilug. Right, we're getting in the weeds. All right, we'll get
there in a while.
I know, yeah, that I'm excited for. I love Maseches Nida. I told you about my friend. He told me he doesn't need a posek. He can paskin Hilchos Nida from the Gemara. He should probably learn Krisos if he's going to learn Nida. He's going to be in big trouble. Guys, it's a disaster. Was that Musari? I didn't mean for it to come out that way. But there's no way. There's no way you're not Chayiv Kares, but there's no way. It's not possible. No way. Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rav Elazar. Let's talk about unique scenarios. He bifnim, the animal is fully in the appropriate place, but viragleha bachutz, the animal's legs are outside of the requisite space. Let's say for kodshim is supposed to be b'tzafon. So let's say the legs are either out of that space or they're in the south. We're going to discuss these particular cases. But if an animal, I'm just saying on its face, this will be hard to understand, but don't worry, we'll unpack it. So if the animal's in the right place, mostly, except that its hind legs are outside, if you cut off the back legs, okay, that's what it says. I didn't write this. And then you do shchita kshera. the Gemara is going to ask on this because this is ridiculous. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. Top of Chavav Amud Aleph, Shachad ve'achar kach chatach. But if you first do the shchita and then you cut off the hind legs, then it's puzzle. So asks the Gemara, hold on 1 second. Top of Chavav Amud Aleph, Chatach ve'achar kach shachad kshera bal mum kamakriv. You just cut off 2 of the legs of the animals. That's like literally the definition of a bal mum. I'm no expert. I know Hilchos Mumin. I know that if they don't have hind legs, they're a bal mum. Yeah, or a little cartilage pierce. A little those things cause maybe not a pierce, but okay. What if a Kohen has okay, whatever. So the Gemara says, how can that be? Bal mum kamakriv elaima. Really, what we should say is that the shechita was done. After the shechita was done, chatach. Then after the shechita, we cut off the back legs. Then ve'achar kach kibel kshera. Why did we do the organization this way? Why was it set up this way? Of shechita, cut off the back legs, then do Kabbalah. Why then is it kosher? Because then the blood has only been inside the correct room. Because the blood will circulate through the legs and then come back to the neck. So if you do the shechita and then right away cut off the legs, then by definition, any of the blood coming out of the neck is in the correct room, because only the legs were in the wrong room. So if my Gemara, I have these 2 legs that are inside the room over here, but the rest of the animals over here, shechita, cut off the legs, then you're good, because all the dam that will come out is not dam from the outside space. That's why the Gemara says, then you don't have to worry about bal mum. Shechita was done already. Cut off both legs. Then the blood that comes out for Kabbalah and Zrika, no problem. It was never in the wrong room. I don't know. Are we looking at molecules of blood? No, seems not that way. They didn't know these things, as far as I know. They didn't know about erythrocytes. They didn't know. I got my blood work done this week. There's like 1 billion data points. We're so nuanced. I don't even know what any of them mean. So I'm thinking for ChatGPT. So that's what the Gemara says. Kibel ve'achar kach chatach. But what if you were first makabel dam and afterwards you cut out the legs? Well, then what blood spurted out? That's blood that circulated even through the hind legs. And those hind legs were in the wrong room. They were outside. So therefore, psula. Chatach ve'achar kach kibel kshera. Is it correct that after you cut the animal, that, you did shchita, chituch, and then Kabbalah. You said it was kosher because we said the blood never came from the wrong room. How can you say that though? Even if that's true, if you cut the cartilage of the ear of a bechor, but you ruined the animal in between the shchita and the Kabbalah. So if you do shchita, chituch, Kabbalah, I understand why you're saying that the dam that came out of the neck was all from the right room. I got you. But why isn't the animal a bal mum now? So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chizda, you're right. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Imi, 8 lines down on Chavav Amud Aleph. Chotech be'ever an shemagia le'etzem. We're cutting the animal in a way where we're severing the blood flow, but we're not cutting through the bone. And therefore, it's just a regular flesh wound and not a mum status. So what they would do in these cases, again, these are theoretical cases because you could just move the animal into the tzafon if it's koche. So what they would do is they would shech the animal, cut around both legs to make sure there's no more blood flow, but don't cut through the bone. You cut through the bone, it becomes a bal mum, it becomes puzzle. So they just did a flesh wound, then the blood wouldn't flow to the neck, and then you were good to go. Kibel ve'achar kach chatach psula. If it's true, like we said earlier, that if you do shchita, you do Kabbalah sadam, and only afterwards do you cut the vessels on the legs, we said psula. Shamas mina, what do we see from here? Dam hamuvla be'evarim, damhu. The reason why we said it's puzzle is because the blood itself was still flowing. You have to first stop the blood from flowing. And that means that the evarim in the back that are carrying the blood are dam hamuvla be'evarim, that's considered to be dam. That's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara, no, lav dafka, dilma mishum shamnunis. Maybe it's because of fat. What does this mean? Rashi, 12 lines down, dibra hamaschil, dilma mishum shamnunis, techazia le'achila. It's edible. V'chashivi kibasar le'ifsule b'yehutze. No. We're saying that it's a problem because the legs are out in the back and there's shamnunis there. Shamnunis is food. Don't nikoragid v'achela put aside. Let's assume that problem would be solved. But there's shamnunis there, and that's food that is yotze, and therefore you're not allowed to eat it. Fine. Then the Gemara says, Shamas mina, one of the other things that I can learn from here is that basar kachim kalim, sheyatza lifnei zrikas dam, pasul. When it comes to kachim kalim, that were yatza lifnei zrikas dam, that is going to be pasul. That if it, what is the case here? That if they were to have left, because the kachim kalim, their feet were outside of that space. They were outside of the requisite space. So kachim kalim, the whole area, the whole azar is kosher for kachim kalim. So that means that they're chutz, they're outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So there we would have thought that ruins everything. And while to me and you this may sound like a reasonable question, it's actually not, because as Rashi points out, toward the end, it says over there that the Rabbi Yochanan, the Rabbi Yochanan says that this case is kosher when their feet are on the outside. So Rabbi Yochanan is the stira to this Gemara. Says the Gemara, no, dilma b'kache kache. Maybe the din that Rabbi Yochanan was talking about was kache kache, all good, and therefore not a question on kachim kal. Tanu Rabbanan. Kache kachem shchitasan b'safon. When it comes to the elevated korbanos, like a korban ola, we know that has to be on the northern part of the Beis Hamikdash. So just for some visual purposes, let's say that this is the floor of the Beis Hamikdash. This is you have the main area. You have the mizbeach over here, okay, and you have the heichal and the ulam over here. So we discussed what safon means, three-way machlokes tanaim. But let's assume for now that this is the mizbeach. Everything from there to the further northern wall is safon. For now, we'll just assume b'pashtas that that's the case. We did see a three-way machlokes tanaim between the Tanakama, Reb Shimon, and Rebbe, and we're not going to focus on that now. But that's what the Gemara says, is that the korbanos, the kachem kachem, their shchita needs to be in the north. The kibul daman also b'chli sharis has to be b'tzafon. Now, let's say the shochet was amad b'darom, v'hoshit yadol l'tzafon v'shachat. So the body of the shochet was, let's say, right next to the mizbech, south of the line of the mizbech. So he's really not in the right place. He doesn't need to be in the right place. The animal needs to be in the right place. It doesn't say the shochet has to be there, right? So the animal's in the north. The shochet is in the south. He extends his hand over the threshold to be in the north and does the shchita. Shchita so kshera. That's what the Gemara says. Kibel Kabbalah so psula. However, to do Kabbalah like that, you're not allowed to do. So that means if the Kohen is standing in the south and he extends his hand into the tzafon, shchita is good. He has to cross over. Shchita is good if his feet are planted in the next to the mizbeach on the south. Shchita is good. Kabbalah sadam is not good. Hichnis rosho v'rubo. What if most of his head and body were beyond the line? We're now talking about percentages of body, similar to Hilchos Sukkah. If you're Rosh Beruba, if it's large enough, exactly, V'shulchano, Ki'ilu nichnas kulo. That's sufficient. But our case wasn't that. Our case was where I was fully standing, 100% of my torso, my legs were also, I just extended my arms out. Pirchasa, if the animal, when the animal has pirchus, which is when it convulses and tremors after shchita. So remember, it's kache kachem, they have to be in the tzafon. So if the animal is shaking around, v'yatasal darom, and the body rolls into a southern part next to the mizbeach, and then v'chazra, the halacha is that kshera. We're not worried about the animal having left the tzafon for a moment. We still think that the animal is going to be kosher. Now, all of that was kache kachem of the holier status. The Gemara says about a third of the way down, kachem kalem shchitasen bifnim. When it comes to kachim kalim, they just have to be bifnim anywhere in that space, north, south, east, west. We don't care. It just has to be in the Ezras Kohanim, broadly speaking. That's considered kosher. The kibul daman b'chli shares bifnim as well, similar to the kachem that have similar status, similar locations for the shchita and the Kabbalah. So too over here. Amad bachutz, let's say the Kohen was standing outside of the Ezras Kohanim. V'hichnis yado lifnim v'shachat, shchita so kshera, kibel kabbalah so psula, similar principles for both kache kachem and kachem kalim. Hichnis rosho v'rubo ki'ilu lo nichnas. This is one difference between kachim kalim and kache kachim, that this is lo nichnas. Pirchas avayatzis alachus. Well, for Kabbalah Sadam he does. Because for Kabbalah Sadam, you're puzzled, not for Shechita. Pirchasa, if the animal is shaking around immediately after the Shechita, which is standard fare, Pirchasa v'yatzis alachutz v'chazra psula. So we see differences between the two worlds of Kache Kachim, which has more kulas, versus Kachim Kalim. By Kache Kachim, there are two differences. By Kache Kachim, Rosh of Rubo is considered to be that you're in the right space, not true by Kachim Kalim. And by Kache Kachim as well, we also know that if an animal is Pirchasa v'yatzis alachutz v'chazra, that it's kosher. Over here we say it's not that way. Shma mina, should have thought. Shma mina, basar kachim kalim, sheyatza lifnei zrikas damim psulim. I might have thought, therefore, that when it comes to kachim kalim, that was yatza lifnei zrikas damim, that it's puzzled because the shchita happened, the pirchus happened, and then I did zrikas hadam. So by kachim kalim, it would be puzzled. That's what it sounds like. Says the Gemara, no, that's not necessarily true. Dilma, perhaps the reason why by kachim kalim we have a different set of halachos, which is kind of what Stan was chasing, is that be'alya v'yoser sakavid u'shtei klayos. Remember that kachim kalim are edible. A lot of the kache kachim are not edible. An ol is not edible. So therefore, when it comes to things that are be'achila, if they go outside of their place, you have a real problem of achila. It's not that the whole animal is puzzle. It's that the edible portions of the animal, which in this case are the alya, which is the tail, the oseres hakaved is translated as the diaphragm, which we use to breathe, helps us to breathe, ushtei klayos, and the kidneys. So that's what it was. It wasn't really about what we thought it was intuitively, that kachim kalim are more. It's not that. It's just that because kachim kalim are edible, there are just some foods that if they go out, now you can't eat them anymore. But it wasn't that the rest of the animal was possible.
In other words, the animal, I understand, goes out.
Very good. But the halacha was consistent there between kachim kalim and kache kachim. By Kabbalah Sadam, we said that if you're standing outside and reach in both cases you were puzzled. You're asking not about that, but about why Rosh over Rubo is different. That's a little bit different. I don't know the answer to that question. I didn't look into it. Didn't even have time to learn this blot. So that's a good question though. All right, let's move through the next part pretty quickly. Ba'amine avuha de Shmuel mishmuel. A faher, the tati and the son. So Shmuel's father sits down and says, okay, Tzaddik, I'm going to test you and see what type of Amora you are. Could you imagine such a dialogue? It's an unbelievable thing. If the animal is inside, but the feet of the animal are outside, what's the halacha? Amar le, Shmuel responds to his father, you need the whole animal inside. This is interesting because the previous Gemara did not say that. So the Mefarshim here point out that Shmuel is talking lechatchila. Of course, lechatchila, we want the whole animal to be inside its appropriate place. It's just that b'di'evet, it's still kosher, but lechatchila, which is what Shmuel is saying, it all should be in the right place. Tala v'shachad mahu. What if we do hoisting and shackling? You pick up the cow upside down by its ankle, and then shachad. Amar le kshera. So Shmuel says to his father, well, if you're hanging the animal upside down for a korban, no problem. Who cares how you shecht it? Amar le ishtabashta. You've made an error. That's actually not true, my son. Po'inan shchita al yerech. Al yerech hamizbech tzafon alifnei Hashem. Al yerech in this context means that it needs to be close to where you are. Veleka. It's not close. So therefore, by korbanos, you cannot hoist the animal up in the air. It needs to be terra firma, on the ground, al yerech hamizbeach, in order for the shechita to be kosher. I just want to be clear. We do our shechita this way because it's not a korban. We're just doing shechita. There's no al yerech hamizbeach, halavai, but there's no al yerech hamizbeach. So we do hoisting and shackling for cows because they're otherwise too difficult to maneuver and to manage. Nitle v'shachat mahu. What if the shochet was hanging in the air, and then he did the shchita? Amar le psula. Shmuel says, "Well, Dad, if you're right that things need to be near the mizbeach, the kohen's hanging up in the air, 10 feet in the air. That doesn't work. Psula." Amar le. Shmuel's father says to me, "Ishtabashta again. You made a mistake. Shchita al yerech v'lo shochet al yerech." I only need it to be that the animal is there. I don't care where the shochet is. He could be hanging from the roof like a ninja. It doesn't make one difference to me at all. It could be wherever he wants, within the space. But he's above. He's like, Tom Cruise hanging from the roof. No problem. Ala shchita.
He says if he has something on his foot on the floor, he's standing on something like.
Beautiful question. I don't know the answer
So
to
the
that.
shechita is kosher bizarre, so it doesn't make a difference. Doesn't matter, you could do it without the coning altogether, so the coning not being on the floor, I think shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Where was that? We learned it on Shabbos, no?
Oh, the Ela.
Yeah, Nadal de la Ha'evet. Your answer might be right, and I hear you. David's answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be something.
Well, it's going to get more complicated in a second because we're going to also talk about Kabbalah, where the shochet is hanging in the sky. Yeah. So very good question. I don't know. So nitle where is that? What we're up to?
Kibel.
Nitle v'kibel mahu. If the shochet is hanging in the sky and does Kabbalah mahu, amarle kshera mutter. That's what Shmuel said to his father. Amarle ishtabashta. You made a mistake. Ein derech sheres bekach. This is not how we do things. Tala v'kibel. If the animal was hung and you did Kabbalah mahu, amarle psula. Amarle ishtabashta. Shchita al yerach below Kabbalah. Yeah, we got him right where we want him. He's right next to the mizbeh. This is like, flashcards when your kids are young, Well, I don't know how Shmuel was during this dialogue, but it doesn't seem normal that he must have been a child. I'm just guessing he must have been a child just based on the way the conversation went. I don't know. We never had this dialogue in my house. Okay, first of the long lines, Amar Abaye, Bekache Kachem Kulan Psulos, in all of these examples that we just learned, all of the examples that we just learned with the cow next to the Mizbeach, with the cow hanging in the air, with the shochet hanging in the air, with the shochet hanging for Kabbalah, with the animal hanging for Kabbalah, all of these things, when it comes to Kache Kachem Kulan Psulos, Bar mi nitle v'shachat, except for the example where the Kohen is hanging in the air and does the shchita, mutter. Bekachim kalim kulan ksheros, bar min nisla v'kibel. However, by kachim kalim, all of them are kosher, with the exception of hanging up in the air and doing Kabbalah, which would be pasul. So that's Shitas Abaye. Omar Rava, Maishna, says the Gemara, Maishna, Tola v'kibel bekachim kalim dekshera. When it comes to hanging the animal and doing Kabbalah Sadam by Kachim Kalim, we said that that's kosher. Why? De avir pnim kipnim dami, because you're still in the vertical airspace. You're on the footprint of the right space. Let's say Kachim Kalim is the whole Azara, right? So you're above the Azara. So it's avir pnim kipnim. Bekache kachim nami avir tzvon kitzafon dami. Why would you make such a distinction that by kache kachim, if the animal's hanging, you can't do Kabbalah? So Ela Amar Rava, he pivots. He was pushing back on Abaye. Abaye wasn't clear enough. So Ela Amar Abaye, Bain bekache kachim, Bain bekachim kalim, ksheros. All the cases are kosher, the ones that we learned between Avuha de Shmuel and Shmuel. Bar min tola v'shachat bekache kachim. Except for the case where an animal is hanging and it was shechted and it was koche koche. Nitle v'kibel, if the Kohen was hanging and he did Kabbalah, bein koche kachim, bein kachim kalim, also those would not be kosher either. Next, ba'amine Reb Yirmiyah me Reb Zera, hu bifnim v'tzitziso b'chutz mahu. If the Kohen is inside, but his tzitzis are outside, what's the halacha? Don't be fooled. This word does not mean what we think it is. Take a look at Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Tzitzis rosho, dehainu sa'aro. I have no idea why this is the word.
I thought you were gonna trick us.
I'm doing no tricks here. It's sa'aro, it's his hair. I have no idea why the Gemara chose this word. So some of the Mefarshim here say, even if it's one hair out, it's not that he had long hair, but it was.
That means it's somewhere over his body.
No. He's like leaning his head back, and the line is in such a way where it's like. Yeah. One way or the other. Yeah.
The knife in your hand.
Yeah. Let me just lean back with my scalpel.
Just a balloon.
Yeah. So that's what the Gemara says. V'tzitziso b'chutz ma'u, his hair is outside of the mikdash. So Amar le lav amris, didn't we already say v'havium la'Hashem achatavo kulo lifnim? We saw that earlier in the Gemara in the name of Shmuel that lechatchila the animal should be where it belongs and the kohen should be where he belongs. Lechatchila, that's true. So there too, there here too as well. Hachanami bevoam al ohel moed ad sheyavo kulo leohel moed. That's exactly what it should be. Everything should be there. The whole kohen should be there. It actually sounds from here. It's hard to say that it's liikuva because the havium over there was only din lechatchila. I presume over here too that it's only a din lechatchila. Let's learn a little bit more. Nasnu al gabe hakevesh shelo keneged hayesod. Let's say a person puts their zrika on the ramp. That's the wrong place to do zrika. Shelo keneged hayesod. They didn't put it near the yesod hamizbeach. On the side of the mizbeach that was between the mizbeach and the ulam, there was a yesod, and on the northern side of the mizbeach there was also a yesod, an ama al ama corner. That's where we were supposed to do the zrika. This guy I totally wasn't paying attention. He ran up to Kebesh and did Zrika. Totally the wrong place. Or he did it Shelo Keneged HaYesod. Or Nasan Es Hanistin Lamata Lamala. You were supposed to do the Zrika below the Chut HaSikra, and instead you did it above. Or Ve'es Hanistin Lamala Limata. Or you did what you should. You were supposed to do it above, and instead you did the zrika. You were supposed to do it above the chut hasikra. Instead, you did it below the chut hasikra. V'esanistim bifnim bachut, v'esanistim bachutz bifnim. Or if it was supposed to be on the mizbeach hagadol, and you brought it on inside the heichal mizbeach hazav, or vice versa, pasal ve'ein bo kares. Halacha is that it's pasal ve'ein bo kares. What? Let's just learn the Gemara first, because the question will fall away for totally other reasons. So Amar Shmuel on the top of Chavav Amid Beis, Pasal Basar Aval Bailim Niskapru. When it comes to the basar, the flesh, the meat, cannot be eaten, but you've gotten your kapara. This is not what we would have thought from the Mishnah. When the Mishnah says pasal, you did your zrika over here, you did the zrika over there, pasal. I would have thought you got no kapara. Shmuel's like, that's not pshat in the Mishnah. Pshat in the Mishnah is that the meat is pasal, but you get your kapara. Totally not. Totally not what we were thinking. So then the Gemara says, my taima. What is the reason why Shmuel touched up the Mishnah this way? The Gemara says on the top of Chavav Mebei second line, Amar Kra, ve'ani nesativ lachem al hamizbeach lechaper. How does he darshan this pasuk? Kevan shehigia dam lemizbeach niskapru bailam. Anywhere. That goes to show that the location of the zrika seemingly is never le'ikuva if it's on the mizbeach. Now, the basar can't be eaten in any of those cases where the zrika is put in the wrong place. But you still get your kapara. Says Gemara, Ihachi, if it's true that we're able to say that the kapara is good, why can't we say that the basar is good? What does the zrika have anything to do with the basar? The zrika is for kapara. It's not the shchita is for the basar. The zrika is for me. It's not for. What's the connection? So the Gemara says, Amar Kra lechaper lechapara nesativ v'lo ledavar acher. The only reason we are able to get kapara is because the pasuk says lechaper v'lo ledavar acher. I can only correct your mistake of where you did your zrika as it relates to the kapara shabo. And therefore, even if you put it on the ramp, you put it on this. On the south wall has no yesod. I have a little amma yesod to the west, but you put it in the wrong place. You put it in the wrong place. Okay, but you get kapara. The basar, I'm sorry. The pasuk said lechaper. I can't extend the Torah's giving any more than I'm able to give, and that's pretty much where it ends. And then one more line, and then we'll stop because it's late. Alma kasavar shelo b'mekomo kimekomo dami. This is going to be the subject of a lot of discussion over the next couple of days. What we see from Shmuel is that even if you do the zrika shelo b'mekomo, it's kimekomo dami. It's as it relates to kapara, and not the basar. Only as it relates to kapara. But we're going to question this from other Mar Mekomos tomorrow. We'll stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night.